There's a quote, it is human to fall, but angelic to rise again. So, what is it? The just man falls like 10 times a day or something,
Seven, yeah.
seven
And
times a
that's the
day.
just man. And so the rest of us, what does that mean for the rest of us? How many times a day do the rest of us
So
fall?
we can't like sit in the shame and guilt of that, but we we need to let that go, repent, and then ask for assistance to purify.
Yes. And I think what happens with those experiences, and here is you're seeing the process of the humility being born. As you're going through these things, you're realizing just how weak you are, and how easy it would be for you to fall to the simplest of stupid things, you know?
Mhm.
And this is where humility is birthed, is that you learn that none of us are above this. None of us are some strength bearing paragon. We can be, in a momentary lapse, can be deceived into something we can totally not intend. And, how many times does that actually happen to a lot of people in life, where a momentary lapse leads to something they totally did not intend, and then they have to come up with the solution to how do they get out of it? How do they fix it? You know?
Yeah, the human will is not like so strong as the heavenly.
Right. And yeah, and we learn, it's so hard to put it into words, but even just reliving these experiences as you bring them up, it plunges me back to that humility of remembering what it was like. Because it's not like you remember these and you're like, wow, I'm so glad I whipped his butt. It's like, oh my God, thank God I got through that. It's like, dang, that was a close call. It could have gone either way. You have this memory of the fact that spiritual warfare is a real battle, and it's a real battle within you. Don't for any minute think that this is like, or was easy for me, or that it was just like, oh yeah, no big thing. It wasn't like that. There were things that were hitting, and it would be, but for the grace of God, I could have been deceived by this or that. I could have seen it incorrectly. And then, but this is where the grace of God comes in, and you have that infused knowledge so that it's a temptation.
Mhm.
But then, so what would have happened if I had fallen on something more slight shortly before? Would I have not had that infused knowledge at that moment when I really needed it? There's just this real humility of realizing that we stand on one thing only, and that's God's grace. None of this is earned by me. None of this did I do. This is all because God propped me up, and he showed me how to do it, and he walked me every step of the way. And so literally, God did this despite me. And that's what's so humbling. And I think we all have to remember this, because so many people, they think that this is something, they think it's something that only happens to saints, or they think it's something that's beyond their strength and it would never happen to them. This is the journey of the common man. This is the journey of every man. And it can happen to all souls. And I hear from so many readers who are going through the exact same processes, the exact same kinds of temptations, different variations. It is the grace of God that carries us through, because God is the one who shows us how we're going to get through it. We
In
don't know
this,
crap on our own.
in this section, use the words, the eternal part of you sees evolution and progress. And the earthly part of you sees only tragedy.
Yes.
So there's greater things happening, even however we're feeling as we're going through it. It's a higher process of evolution that's in progress.
Right. Exactly.
There was 5 undercover cops infiltrating the mob. This lady killer, and she had like a silencer, and she's like chasing you, shooting at you, like choo choo. And
She's an agent. She's a double agent,
double agent.
but no one else knows that she's double.
But you knew. And so
Yeah.
you got to the undercover cops before she got there, and then she ended up getting killed.
Yep.
And so when people do not follow the light, their plans are often played out on themselves, as we said earlier. So she was a victim of her own vile plans. But then she came back to you guys and she thanked you, because that's the only way that she could have woken up from her stupor, was for something drastic like that to happen.
Yeah, and she would have, because her plan was to take out the other 5 cops, she would have incurred such a debt in doing so. Because I was going through with the angel who accompanied me, I was going through a lot of grief. That was there no other way, that the only way was that she had to die. And it was like, no, there wasn't any other way. And then she came and said, no, there wasn't any other way. And yeah, you pulled me out of my stupor. And, think about that word, because isn't that what karmic life is? We're all walking around in a stupor,
I wonder what like our universal IQ is. Our UQ, I don't know. Probably like, well, you're a 2. Not bad. It'll be a 1. And
Yeah, so it was a real revelation to me at that time that she was grateful that we had done this alteration, which ended in her life ending, but she did not incur that debt of taking all those lives, and we had stopped her in her tracks. And she did. She explained how she was just so entrenched in her delusions that she would not have woken up any other way. And it was interesting.
so for you, it was
Very
tragic.
upset that she would, had to die in order to have that awakening. But it was apparently true that it was the only way.
And it was shown to you by her coming back to you to thank you.
Mhm.
That was the Lord's way of going, hey man, we don't always know everything. Things going on here. 'Cause you were in a gymnasium, so this is for like some spiritual warfare knowledge here. I mean, it all is, but this is like specific. And so you're in a gymnasium of students and you're teaching the first stages of energetic alteration, like jamming guns with bolts of light, stuff like that. And then there's another teacher that comes in and says there's a lot more to alterations than what is going on in these people's minds. They see it as babysitting or a quick fix. Some of them look at it from very self-serving eyes, and only a few see it from a realm of knowledge. They see it as an intellectual endeavor or from the standpoint of their ego. Only a few of these students, if that many, will be chosen to continue in their learning. The others are not doing it for the right reasons. So could you speak to that a little bit? Because as we're getting into this, I can see how like, oh, it sounds cool. I can do this. Or also self-serving, like, yeah, I'm powerful. I'm doing these
I
things.
want to be a mystical badass.
Yeah. Don't you know who I am?
Yeah, exactly. When ironically in reality, in the mystical spheres, these things remain relatively unseen, So yeah, for doing it for the right reasons, you would be doing it because you really want to serve your fellow humanity, because you really want to be a part of that evolutionary process. That's the charitable giving back of creation, continuing to create and giving back to creation what creation is giving to you in your own evolutionary process. And a lot of people in those classes we're still struggling with the ego, pride, and
Because it's
wanting to
not,
do it for the wrong reasons. And this also goes to that they would have to be in a place of non-judgment before they would ever be allowed into that arena. You really have to, and it's not just I can say I do not judge.
yeah, I got to work on that one.
It has to be this real, it's energetic. You are not judged by that factor because you can say it. It's you are judged by the energy that emanates from the pit of your being. A lot of these souls would be extricated for that reason alone, because you cannot truly be of assistance or true service to another soul until you truly just care about them from that place of unconditional love and non-judgment. And you do have to have this humility as well, that you respond to the call of God for whoever he sends you to, with this understanding that he's going to tell you what to do, where to do it, how to do it, and when, and you just shut up and do it and then get out and be quiet.
It's not by us, it's through us from God.
It's through us.
Or
Yes.
it's an instrument, a vessel
Yes.
of allowance and surrender and just being caring and loving, and
Yes.
let it happen.
Yes. And so you do have to be able to surrender to God in order to do that as well.
So going into like a dark place, there's a serial satanic ritual murder, but the deceased volunteered for it because he thought he'd be more powerful in death than he was in life. And so when you met with this creature, it was really dark evil. And you were like, whoa, it was like very powerful. And he said he would crush you, and then you just scream, get out. And he tried to crush your skull, and you just said, you are pitiful. And you called out the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, which I've heard you say that without Jesus Christ, many, if not all of these spiritual warfares, you would not have been victorious. So this is powerful tools that we have.
Well, and let me just add to that. Not only would not have been victorious, but he probably would have succeeded in crushing me, and in all those warfares without the name of Christ, the name of Jesus Christ, or without his assistance. That would mean defeat. And defeat could have manifested in a great number of ways, because it wouldn't have just meant that I wouldn't have been victorious. I would have been defeated. And that could have been really catastrophic.
Right. So then you were guided to sing. Hallelujah, the light come tumbling in, singing with power and fury, the light came barreling in and sent this being back to the first realm. And then you were instructed to sweat. Okay, so this is really important. You have walked into evil, and now we must cleanse you. All of those energies will come out. It won't be comfortable, but you must sweat. And you had pain in every joint as the toxins came out. And so you said something like, if somebody's drowning in the muck and you go in and you have to go in to save them, you're going to get some of that muck on you. And so you have to clean yourself afterwards, get this energy, all this muck off of you. And so this happens when you go into any place. You go into a haunted mansion, you go into the darker realms to go help a soul to be lifted up. You're going to get
when you go into the purgatories and the lower hells, you often would undergo purifications, but even in some cases exorcisms after going there, because you had to, because you could not go into those realms without being contaminated that badly. And in this case, I had to go through what was a sweat. It was almost like a sweat lodge kind of experience. And it was really, really painful.
This really evil person, that when they did the satanic ritual, like, it was horrific. Like, they peeled his skin off, did all this stuff. And so it was real evil, but he wanted to destroy you. And so there was a tribunal. The second death was brought upon him. So there's the physical death, but then the second death again is, how would you describe that?
Well, I think that Christ's answer to that question was pretty clear, which is it's not for you to understand, it's just for you to know.
Okay.
There's a lot of theories out there about what is the second death in the Bible, in the book of Revelations. And some people think it means the extinction of the soul. Some people think it means that they're thrust into an even lower hell. And I was, asking Christ when they pronounced that judgment on him, which was the second death.
You're like, can you be specific?
Can you explain that, please? And it was just, it's not for you to understand. It's just for you to know. And I think this, again, we talk about mysteries of God, and sometimes partial knowledge is revealed, but not the whole mystery. And this is one of those situations where that was the case. And it was only, I was only allowed to see and know that much. And what that second death is still remains a mystery as to what does that mean when the second death.
So you were brought into this situation because they're like, well, we got to call Marilynn in for this one or whatever. So they're not going to take like a newbie and like throw them in there like, go against this, But one of the things is when the impurities of your soul were manifesting on your body as part of the removal, you were bedridden for several months, and then the dark tried to see if they could get you to turn because you were being sickly, right? So at this level of your spiritual warfare, you took on some actual physical hits that
Yes.
manifested in this physical body.
Yeah. I
Right.
started experiencing more physical illness. Yeah.
And then at that point, a dark spirit came in and was going to try to take your baby. Felt really guilty about it. So that makes it okay, right? Yeah. I feel guilty though, sorry. But then there was like 20 more these dark ones, and there were parasitic beings that were eating the remains of children on the ground who had died because of these beings, and you knew that you were in hell. So this is a dark place that they had brought you to. These were the consumers of children, which is energized all kinds of dark deeds towards children. And you knew that you were in hell, and you just had to get this guy alone. And perhaps if you got him alone, you'd have a chance. Right?
Yeah.
You started chanting ancient prayers after you got him alone that destroy the powers of evil. Do you remember what this chant was, or is it something for you to?
No, it was one of those things that I couldn't recall upon return.
So with that chant, you picked up a stone and you were like chanting it into the stone. And then you were throwing at them to no effect, but then they started to glow as you continued with the chants to destroy the power of evil. And you calling out to the universe, because he had these dark robes on and he wouldn't take them off, right? And then all of a sudden, boom, boom, and like boom, they just went away. Because all there was like, see, like these dark holes where his eyes are supposed to be. Otherwise, it was all black. All of a sudden, he was just naked. And it was just this blonde man. And you were like, behold, the consumer of children. Because exposure is what evil fears the most. And it made him shatter and bow. I don't know if I remember right, but I think energy started flowing from the sky and like into his eyes. But I don't know, do you have some things to share about this experience? I know that God is like swift. If there's anything against the innocent ones, it's like the swiftest, like boom, you are. See you later.
Yeah, this was the realm like where you would see the child molesters, the child murderers, this kind of stuff against children. I remember there being these, they were all robed in black. They just had little 2 holes for their eyes, but there were also these creatures, which were also, I knew they were souls as well. And they were almost like bugs, but they were human size. And they had, it's like they were walking almost like, I don't know, like you see close to the ground with like on 4 legs, like bugs, but really close to the ground, like close to the mud and muck. They were bottom feeders, you know what I mean? And it was just a lot of mud there. It was just such an evil place and such an intense thing to be there. And yeah, the one thing that was really fascinating about it too was that, one of evil's biggest fears is to be exposed, but yet the most effective means for actual transformation for any of us is for us to expose our falsehoods, even if it's just to expose it to ourselves and then act accordingly and take care of it. So it was an intense place to be, a very, very difficult place to be.
You've never seen the eternal power like so present and so swift.
Yeah,
The
it was
consumer of
definitely
children.
where the minute there was, it was very sudden, quick judgment, that if there was an act against children, the souls that went here very quickly, very quickly.
You were visited by like a well-known musician, and he was aligned with the gull. And so he was given a music that would be popular, that people would want to buy and listen to and make him famous. And he wasn't willing to give up that darkness. And he was trying to sexually seduce you. So he liked his fame and his wealth. And so he chose a lower destiny for profit and reward and lost his higher path. And so one thing you said to him, because he said that I wrote some of my own stuff, but it wasn't getting any traction. But one of the things you told him, even though he had given himself over to the gull, was, and I do have a question about like music, whether it can be infused with demonic energy that can kind of affect humans. If it's done by like a
Yes.
way, it can, okay. But one of the things you said to him, it's not too late on his way out. It's like, don't forget those little ideas you had of your own. Like, maybe it's not going to be like super fast that you're famous. Maybe it's a longer process of you being your own self and taking a higher path. But doing the quick route and giving up your soul for a little bit of quick wealth and fame.
Yeah. Yeah. And how many people would do that? How many people would be really honest with themselves about that, honestly? How many people would take the quicker route and get what they wanted right off the bat and think very little of it, not realizing that the real meaning and purpose of this earthly lifetime may just have been lost, not to mention you could be going backwards a bit, but that you've just put it off for another lifetime, right?
And I think people think of this kind of thing figuratively, where like actually like Satan shows up. He's all, blood red with horns and a tail. And he's like, hey, like that Devil Goes Down to Georgia little thing. It's like, because, maybe it doesn't come in that, guys. Maybe it's just telepathic things are put into their head about this certain song and it's not theirs, and they energized to go with it by the darks, and then they find themselves in this place and they don't even know maybe they're making a deal with the devil.
Well, and I think that's very likely with a lot of people. And so music can have a hook that can be energized by God, and it can have a hook that's energized by the demonic. And so it's easy for people to deceive themselves into not really looking at it closely enough and discerning, is this hook good or evil? What am I doing? And I mean, in our world today, and most of the time, because we are in this moral realm and it's usually pretty much the same, it's easy to justify just about anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what you have to do, what every individual soul has to do, is determine how important is it to you to fulfill the purpose of your coming here this time, right now? Because that's the cost. I'll tell you another thing that people have told me without question, without exception, is that everyone I hear from says, I don't want to reincarnate again. I don't want to have to come back here. And it's like, okay, well, then the answer to that question is all the more important, right? Everybody says that to me. I mean, everybody feels that way. We probably both feel that way. I know I don't want to come back here either, but it's all dependent on whether or not I fulfill everything I have to fulfill, right? The answer to that question then is really important, because if you don't want to come back again, then you can't choose the quick reward over the path that might require more work and might be more difficult, but might actually achieve liberation for you.
As the quick one makes you move backwards.
Right. Yeah.
As opposed to us moving forward, even though it's slow and steady.
Right. And that doesn't mean either, too, let's be fair. That doesn't mean that everybody who has fame or fortune has done so on the back of the dark side, because that's not true at all. There are people who have been called to artistic lives who are doing exactly what they're called to do, and that's a separate matter. But there are a lot of people who are given these options, and a lot of times, exactly like you said, unbeknownst to them. They don't pay attention, So like this particular person we're talking about, I would venture to guess, would not be consciously aware of any of that. So, because this person does exist, I would believe that this person has no clue that this is the case. And so this person is still riding the wave of that decision and having that fame and that fortune. And when this person crosses over, it'll be an interesting conversation as to, well, how does that impact what this soul now has to do next time around? I think it's an interesting point that so many people, everybody I ever communicate with, I don't want to come back here. I don't want to have to reincarnate. And so then if that's true, then we all have to ask those questions even more earnestly.
There was a guardian angel for your family. You awoke in the spirit, and there was a heart-shaped light with 4 silver stars.
Yeah.
Signified your family, and then you realized this was the guardian of your family. And there was a demon in the corner, and the guardian's just like, I'll take care of it. But it probably felt really good to know that there was a guardian of your family, like watching over everybody.
It was very beautiful. I painted that too. That's somewhere in the garage.
Next time, gotta bring it out. I just interjected that little, thing of light in there because there's a few things here a little darker. There was a ruckus in the bathroom. You went in, there was a demon in the bathtub. You got distracted for a second. He touched you and then took you into this deviant place of orgies and such, absurd. Then the demon took you to even worse place, and it was filled with body bags, and it was souls trapped in darkness but not fully dead, trying to get their last breath. And then they put you in one, and that's actually when they were tempting you with the best-selling book and the stage with the tour bus and all of those. Then all of a sudden you found yourself in an open field with this psychopath. And he's like, I kill people, I once killed someone for eating crackers. And I think he called him a sick son of a bitch.
They did.
But you know what? You're a sick son
And I
of a
really
bitch.
like your imitation of him because it sounds very good.
Oh, that's not, I don't know if that's good.
Well, you're an actor, so it's okay. That's
okay. But he's like, come serve me. I will show you true power. But it was very ominous. It was a very dark place. And you thought that you'd be destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And you're ready. Okay, if I'm going to be destroyed, then I am. But you screamed out at the top of your lungs, basically, F you, Satan, basically. And then the dark left. And then you had to go through an ancient ritual of purification again.
I believe there were 2 Jewish rabbis who swept me away for that this
It
time.
did. Yep, that's where the ancient ritual of purification.
Yeah, it was quite an honor that they did that. It was very beautiful.
And then
Yeah,
they,
I'll never forget it. It was terrifying. And I mean, it took everything I had within me to actually be able to shout out my expletives to Satan.
yeah. The what I wrote down was the rabbi said that I believe that we should let all people worship as they please.
Mm.
Because sometimes I see like there's one person I listen to who's got some great material, good stuff, but he doesn't. It's either Christianity only or nothing else. But it's always it's Christianity like this, and I see the power and how Jesus affects people. I see. And I believe your works and stuff, how powerful Jesus is, and it's a beautiful thing. But there are other spiritual teachers. There are the things that are good, and to only say it's my way or the highway, because being Jewish, following the Jewish faith, is not Christianity, but
Right.
doesn't make what they believe any less than what someone else worships that is of the light, the truth, or a part of it, at least.
Mhm.
It's just like many mansions of evil.
Oh, yay. Let's remember that.
There's many mansions of evil in the universe that you journeyed to. It's disconcerting because at first you were shown all the heavenly mansions and how beautiful it was. And for such a long time. So it's just like, look at all this greatness. It's like, well, we did that to prepare you. Now look at this. It's like, oh, go with some of that awesome stuff again. There was a mansion that you went to haunted by souls after death. Some souls would go there at night, and each mansion having the characteristic of a particular vice.
Yeah.
Very specific. And your job was to go there and rescue souls from these places, exercise and dismantle the energies as commanded by the Lord.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And all it takes is for one of these souls sincerely to look to the sky and, Lord, what does it all mean? And all the angels of the Lord are called in to nourish that spark so that it may one day become a flame.
Yeah, that's true.
Because these people are in this place, but when they're in it, it's like they don't even have access. Or it's more difficult to have access to calling out to God because they're so entrenched, right? They're so in this darkness that the vibration is such that to even think of like uttering.
Well, what's interesting about it is just a couple of things I'll throw in on that. First of all, even just reading a book called A Wanderer in the Spirit Lands, which was put out by A. Farnese in the 1800s, which shows the journey of the soul from the lowest hells until he reaches his redemption in the higher spheres. You see a similar pattern in this accounting, where as the soul is able to reach to a higher thrust, he reaches out for help, and help is sent, but it's literally incremental steps along the way. So it's only moving like an incremental step upward.
Oh, it's not like you don't go to 10.
No, you don't do that. It's one incremental step, but that it's happening. And of course it's by steps, the old Taoist saying about it's by those water drops that the pitcher is eventually filled. So there's the wanderer in the spirit lands, but there's also these other accountings in near-death experiences that people have shared. We have people who have had hellish experiences when they have near-death experiences. And they experience something similar where all of a sudden, they're surrounded by a variety of different hellish things going on. And the only thing they can do is either get on their knees or bowl over and ask for Jesus Christ or for God to help them. And somehow they do. And literally what these stories tell us, what Wander in the Spirit Lands tells us, and what my experience tells us, is the minute that happens, help is sent. Because the minute it happens in these near-death experiences, Jesus Christ is there. The angels show up. God the Father shows up in some of the experiences. It's immediate. And in my experiences, it was literally the minute an aspiration is achieved in a soul. I don't know about this. I think I'm ready to do something better than this. Help is sent that quickly. Despite how difficult that may seem, think about what we experience here. The minute one of us has a higher aspiration, the assistance that we receive, the unique synchronicities that occur that lead us to exactly what we need to do that, or to make it happen, or to bring it about, and sometimes even spiritual events that occur to bring it about. It happens all throughout creation. It doesn't just happen here. So it happens even in those lowest of hell realms, even in the purgatorial realms, just as we see it here.
You talk about dark energies that settle in the lower chakras, that we need to pull them up through the crown chakra to get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
So can you show me a little example of that? Would it be like?
Well, it's a process that's more energetic than physical. But what you're doing is it's a process of transmutation that's occurring starting from the root and the base chakra, and you're moving it then to the next one, and then there's more transformation that occurs. It's mixed in with the emotional and all that stuff, and then it has to move into the heart, and it's moved and mixed in with the love and the heart and all that stuff, and then the throat, and then everything, because all of these things have different elements. And what you're doing is you're refining it so that by the time it reaches the crown, whatever's left that is not refined will just dissipate and be gone.
Interesting. Transmutation.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Swedenborg said in Heaven and Hell, the evil in a person is hell within.
Yes.
And often like by our own making.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right?
Yes.
Demons of the common man, there's like this demon of rage in this one man. It goes through a benign state where it's just like a 4-foot green snake, like, oh, it's all chill. And then all of a sudden becomes like a 30-foot tall raging cobra with fire coming out of it.
Yep.
So, and this person wasn't even aware that this was really in them.
Right. And it's not that uncommon, because it's one of the demons of the common man. It's a pretty common little creature. Yeah, it's not something that people are so aware of having. When
you exercised that demon, you waited until it was in the benign state, when it was the 4-foot little docile, and then it was like, get out of here.
Well, you're dealing with it at all manifestations, because I do remember having to battle it while it was at full force, and and then you're having to pull back, and because you're having to self-protect, and then you're trying to bring it back into a docile state so that you can then pull it out. It was more of a complicated process with that one because of the two states of the demon.
So the Suda of evil held the knowledge of these lower incarnational souls that occurred in energy.
Yeah.
And opportunities, that we kind of talked about this before, opportunities are given for beings in the lower evolutionary realms to move up to higher, with the opportunity to learn and grow, just as beings from higher realms are given opportunity to descend for higher knowledge in lower dimensions. So beings in the lower dimensions who are given opportunities, when they fail, they're often brought back into the lower hells and made into harmless animals. Again, we spoke of that before.
Mhm.
Some demons are given to the third realm by human incarnation, which is few in comparison to karmic delusion. And then the actual evil that occurs in this realm is instigated mostly by incarnate demons or former wards of hell. So what's the difference between incarnate demons and wards of hell?
Well, or former wards of hell, which is
Former
means
wards of hell.
a ward of hell would be a soul in hell versus an incarnate demon is someone who's actually contorted to that, to that actual type of creature. So the difference would be the ward of hell still has in the soul still resembles more of a human soul, whereas an incarnate demon implies that they've gotten so far gone that they have actually morphed into a demonic creature. They've actually become something more.
And so the actual evil that occurs in this realm is instigated by incarnate demons or former wards of hell who manipulate other incarnations to their dirty deeds. So basically just like, whispering in your ear, and
A lot of that, yeah.
we can read your mind.
One of the biggest things you'll see is that besides the obvious evils that are done under cover of night, under secrecy, like, serial killers and things like that, you see a lot of the evil that is done is instigation, whether it's on small levels or, between people, between groups of people, or even the creating of wars. You know what I mean? It goes from the smallest of levels between a few people here and there to all the way up to creating wars across the globe. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's instigated by these incarnate demons or former wards of hell who manipulate other incarnations to their dirty deeds, usually karmic darkness, dominant darkness, but sometimes those of light that are naive and as a result fall from grace. So karmic darkness, that's just something we're bringing from lifetime to lifetime. And then
Yeah.
dominant darkness is more just like pure evil.
Dominant darkness is chosen evil.
Oh,
where
chosen.
you like it and you're comfortable with it. You like to cause harm to other people. Karmic darkness is darkness that is caused by actions that you partake in that are delusion based, but your intentions may not necessarily be, you're not like just getting off on harming other people, but your actions do harm people. Dominant darkness are souls who enjoy that. And that's one of the things that causes people who are generally good to be easily confused and deceived, because they don't understand that souls who are dominantly dark or pure evil actually enjoy causing harm to other people. That's the nature of it. Just as a soul that is purely in the good, reflects God, enjoys doing good to others and doing things that benefit humankind. The reality, and for those who think in that way, it's just almost unconscionable for them to even comprehend that this is actually something that these souls in dominant darkness and pure evil actually enjoy it. They like it. It's part of their nature.
And then some could just be like completely overcome by it or addicted to it. And they
Yes.
or they can't even like stop doing it.
Right.
Or they might even hate it. Like, this sucks. But then just be driven to do it because it's just so entrenched.
That can be too, but generally there is a certain pleasure taken in where they're at.
All souls who incarnate in mortal realms, except for very unusual souls who volunteer to come to fulfill a higher task are controlled by elements of darkness to a certain extent. Even one who has reached karmic purification has just only begun.
Yes.
We know that. I guess we've talked about that. Like all souls who incarnate here, there's elements of control by the darkness to a certain extent. So it's kind of just the playing field. You kind of, I think we're dropped in, and there's all these structures of evil and darkness that are already here entrenched in this knowledge realm that
Yeah.
we come here with the opportunity to learn as much as we can, but we got to be able to discern and see what all these dark aspects and structures are so that we can then choose life-giving evolutionary things and then
Yes.
also help others to realize and see these things.
Yes. Yeah. The thing with that is that if you look at, what we talked about with the universal sphere of realms, and you realize realms 1 and 2, dominant, darkness, pure evil, realms 3 and 4, mortal realms, and realms 5 and above on into infinity are the light worlds, then you can comprehend that, yeah, we have a long way to go. We're literally little beginners here. And so if we overcome the challenges of physical incarnational life, then we are just beginning in the light worlds, because literally we're talking about an infinite number of these light worlds. Realm 5 is just the beginning. There's millions of them.
Sometimes a dark energy will come in or a karmic darkness that comes in. And then can we talk a little bit about the parents' role, who may be a little bit higher vibration or the same as their kid, but where their role is to help this being to kind of de-energize some of its proclivities?
Yeah, there is a very serious role of parents to give the guidance to the kids. We really are overseeing the formation of souls as parents. It doesn't diminish at all the accountability then of the children as well, because you can raise your children up right and they can still make decisions that contradict that. Like here it says, although you are not accountable for the sins of your parents, you are accountable for the aspects of your parents' vice that you embrace. By the nature of the laws of existence, you take on some of the dark influx that your parents have within them, and you become subject to the laws of cause and effect in regard to their actions. And that is how, parents' sins can be visited upon the children. Okay, so like here we talk about this. It says some souls were involved. This is about the cults, and it says that some of those souls were involved with the cults because their parents had been. Others were involved because their parents had been naive about the true nature of darkness, not recognizing that allowing the seeds of any darkness through television, vanity, greed, or any other form could energize this more highly developed evil in any soul, but most especially a child. Some parents themselves did not have any discernment and thus did not teach their children discernment. And some parents were naive about the company their children kept or didn't insist enough that they stay away. And some children were coming from a darkness they had brought with them from previous lives, which had nothing to do with their parents. And some who were older were drawn by their own evil impulse, which was highly developed, and some due to the apathy of their own upbringing. And so this goes into this idea of original sin, which is a little different than I think most people see it. And I wrote this little thing about it, which is that original sin is an interesting concept because it can apply to so many aspects of existence. Original sin can be the failings that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular extended family that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular city or township that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular country that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of a particular society that we, through example, give to our own children. Original sin can be the failings of all humanity that we, through example, give to our own children. And original sin can also be the failings of a particular soul that through the mechanism of karmic retribution and transmigration are given to that soul at birth. Original sin can also be the acts of darkness that a soul is forced to process because it was done unto them. And so that's part of how we understand some of the responsibility as parents, but we have to understand that as parents, we are the first teachers of discernment in our children's lives. I think that it's probably fair to say that many of our children don't learn that from us, you know. And a lot of people try really hard, but they need the spiritual training. And so trying to divorce it from the spiritual side of it really makes it hard for it to stick. And then you also just have the fact that society itself impacts our children, and then everyone makes their own free will choice.
Moving to discernment for a moment, we can determine the nature of hellish spirits' malice by looking at their unspeakable arts. These skills are virtually unknown in the world. One kind is the misuse of correspondences, another the misuse of the lowest elements of the divine design, a third the communication and inflow of thoughts and affections using transformations, investigations, other spirits beyond themselves, and emissaries. A fourth kind involves working with hallucinations. A fifth, projection beyond themselves, so they seem to be present where their bodies are not. Impersonation, persuasion, and lies. In regards to these unspeakable arts and discernment, what say you, Marilynn Hughes?
Well, that is a quote from Emanuel Swedenborg's book, Heaven and Hell, that is included in the Mysteries of the Redemption and Spiritual Warfare, Angels and Demons. So I guess we could go through them individually. So when they talk about the misuse of correspondences, that would be the intention to confuse the human mind about what things really are. Another with the misuse of the lowest elements of the divine design. That could be anything from the nature to the use of improper sexual or any of the lower elements within our nature that the demons would use to tempt someone to do something that would not be for their highest good. The communication and inflow of thoughts and affections is the simplest and easiest one that we see the most of. One of the things people can do this, they can even do this as an experiment, is pay attention when you're meditating and when you're dreaming for random thoughts that might flow in, and see if you catch once in a while some random thought that comes in that makes no sense, or when you hear it and you actually pay attention to it, is actually a demonic suggestion, because they come in and you can, if you pay attention, you're going to catch them. You're going to be like, whoa, wait a minute, where'd that come from?
What the?
Yeah, but that's what they do. They're going to plant those kinds of thoughts, just like, the divine emissaries will plant holy thoughts. They're going to plant unholy thoughts. A fourth kind involves working with hallucinations. So that can be false visions, false mystical experiences. It can even be, we talked about going after our pride, convincing people that, oh, you're a prophet of God. You are the second coming of Christ. You are this, you are that. It could be anything like that. Anytime you are being told something that you are grabbing a hold of to make you feel like you are more important than the rest of the world, that's a warning to you, because that's a warning sign of something is amiss. A fifth, projection beyond themselves. They seem to be present where their bodies are not. Well, and see, that can happen too, where they can use the gifts of the spirit, including out of body travel, to deceive. Every paranormal gift has a lighted side and a dark side. People can use them for good or evil. And so the demons can use it for good or evil. And so that is why discernment is so important, because out of body travel is just a paranormal gift. It's not good or evil in and of itself. It's just a state of the soul in the body. How it is used is up to each one of us, right? And of course, a sixth kind involves impersonation, persuasion, and lies. And that's all the obvious things where they're going to convince you of things either to do, things about yourself, things about others that are just not true, or things that could, they're trying to tell you things that could dramatically impact your life or the lives of others in a negative way, if it's the demons, right?
Killing the baser self. This is like one of those rudimentary, like beginning parts of the journey, is where if we want to go to out of body missions and be a spiritual warrior, we have to really look closely at our baser self and see where there's parts of us that we need to work on, to give up, to surrender, to purify, so that we can evolve and be of greater assistance. Demons of the common man.
Yes,
I remember the rowboat with the monk.
I do.
I wrote a song called Demons of the Common Man.
Did you really?
It doesn't have anything to do with the monk and the rowboat, but it's about demons of the common man. Demons of the common man. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting, because I was looking over like the compassion and understanding that the monk had for these people that were on his boat that you're going to talk about, I'm sure, and the imperturbability that he had.
It was one of those experiences you never forget. It was so cool. You know, I had been taken to this island of the demons of the common man, and this Buddhist monk was with me. And he was basically my guide there and basically, I think what the whole purpose of it, well, there was a lot of purposes, but the biggest purpose was for me to observe him and how he handled them. There was, first of all, seeing some of these basic common demons that so many of us can relate to and share, you know, the demon of rage, the gull demon, destructive sexual energy. I'm trying to remember what some of these others were called. I remember
Those are the two main ones that stuck out to me.
Yeah, I remember some of the others, and but I don't remember what they would have been called, but they had to do with blasphemy and just this irreverence towards sacred and holy things. But it was the common manner of it. What we see in our world, where the common blasphemy,
Yeah, whereby
blasphemy,
people aren't even aware that it's
yeah.
like the demon of rage in the guy that was on the boat with him, and the monk's just all chill, you know,
Yep.
just compassion and understanding, and the 30-foot tall like rage, like blah in his face, like blah, and he's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then the seductress like showing her leg and trying to seduce him, and he's just like,
he's totally imperturbable through the whole thing. And this was very new to me at the time. Now it's not, but it was at the time. And I was just so impressed. And it was just such an amazing experience. Yeah, just watching him was transformative, because he was completely imperturbable and he wasn't afraid of them. Especially, the demon of rage was one that is easy to be afraid of, because it's this little benign thing, but it becomes this very, very scary thing very quickly and out of nowhere. And it's huge and very frightening when it's active.
mm-hmm.
And he was just chill, regardless whether it was active or passive. And he understood these manifestations of the common man and totally imperturbable. It was probably one of my first introductions to even just the concept of imperturbability, the ability to be in the presence of all these different manifestations of vice or just existence, and not be afraid, not be impacted by it, but be totally loving, caring, and in the moment with it.
Yeah.
I remember being so freaked out because we had to get on the rowboat and leave the island, and he invites the little common man demons into the boat. And I'm like, what?
Mhm. You sure about that? I can kind of visualize the guy too, because it's not like he's gritting his teeth. Like when the
Right.
guy's like raging in his face, like, "Oh, I'll just get through this, man." He's got like the spark of love in his eye. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, he really
I
did.
love you.
Yep.
Mm.
Hmm. Total peace, total tranquility, total understanding. And he knew how to ride through the vice of humanity. He
And
was
that's
completely imperturbable in the sense that he really understood the plight of humanity. That's one of the signs of a true master, and he was a true master. And it was so awe-inspiring to watch. And it was one of my first experiences with this concept of not being freaked out, even in the presence of dark forces, even in the presence of vice and things that were even destructive, but
Mhm.
this ability to sit peacefully next to it. And he just knew what to do, and he was completely peaceful about it.
And it goes beyond that too. When I was studying acting like 30 years ago, when I first started really studying, it's like you were kind of trained as an actor, like your job is to sell emotions. And then the way you do that is by being affected by somebody else and then expressing what that affection that you felt back. So if someone like, hey, I really love you. And then you're like, oh, I really love you too. Or if somebody's like, I'm really angry at you. And you're like, oh yeah, you can screw off. So, so it wasn't with just imperturbability, which is masterful in and of itself, where you can just block it out, but also that he kept his cup full of love the whole
Yes.
time and compassion. No, like, oh, that's what's happening to you. Wow. I love you so much. Oh yeah, I'm yawning in your face. I
Yeah.
love you so much.
And it was real. It was real. That's what was so powerful about it. It was totally real. And so, you're talking about that from the acting standpoint. What's so masterful about it was he was legitimately not impacted by what they were doing. His inner peace was not impacted by their lack of peace. And in fact, his peace was contagious to all around him. And, in this particular experience, I was the one who was supposed to pick up the most, because these demons of the common man were kind of participating in this educational experience for me as well. And so the demons were kind of doing their thing and not really conscious of their awakening or anything, but at that moment. But he really was not impacted in any negative way by what they were doing. He had no judgment towards it either. He wasn't like when the young woman who kept making advances at him because she had this demon of the gull demon, the destructive sexual energy. He's not, you whore. He's not like that at all. It's like this energy of, I understand why she's doing that completely. Complete love and understanding. I understand it. Completely understood it. There was no judgment. None.
It wasn't really who that person was.
Right. Exactly. It was something that they had taken into themselves because of karmic delusions.
And the word illusion kind of comes to me too. It's like it's all an illusion.
Right.
Not
Mhm.
even, it's not who they are. It's something. not them.
Right. Uh-huh.
Okay, oh, that's happening, but that's not you.
Right.
And, it reminds me of the book Training of the Mind in the Great Way,
Oh,
kind of.
yes.
And wasn't the Dalai Lama kind of connected with this story in a way?
Well, the Training of the Mind in the Great Way is written by the first Dalai Lama.
Yeah, but I mean, in this story of the demon of the common man, was
No.
among, okay. So, but it kind of reminds me of that, because in Training of the Mind in the Great Way, we start with just feeling the love for, let's say, our mother, and just fully feeling that, and then moving on to, let's say, our dad and our brothers and sisters and our extended family and friends, and then on out into the whole world. And it seems like he kind of took it to a whole other level. So it's like, well, now that I love everybody on earth, and then just starting to like love beyond that, to a place
Mhm.
where no matter what came his way, he could still love the essence or the eternal part of whatever he came
Well,
from.
in Training the Mind in the Great Way, the first Dalai Lama encourages us as a practice to bring the love that we have for father, mother, sister, brother, for all our close relations, and to realize that every human being is that to someone else, and to then extend that sort of filial love to every living being. And you could definitely say that this monk had mastered that to absolute perfection. And I would say that that love was absolutely sincere. There wasn't it wasn't like it was a practice to him anymore. That's why he was master for sure, because he literally just was that. He embodied that.
And that's going on with that too, because it's still related and connected. And so whatever your thoughts are, and I know your thoughts always go deep like the ocean and have like undercurrents, and whatever, there's all kinds of things in the ocean. But I want to talk a little bit about inheritance of sins, of demons of the common man,
Mhm.
and then where these come from, and maybe a little bit like how we can, is that what we do in spiritual warfare, is to try to help break these cycles of the inheritance of sins, and maybe.
Well, some of that's definitely part of it, because ironically, we do pick up, and this is, original sin. People don't realize that when we are, whatever it is that we or our parents might visit upon our children or have been visited upon us, the demons that might have been associated with them or are with us, those demons then are going to be, just by their natural affinity, it's going to be much more likely it will follow those children. And that's what it means, that the sins of the fathers will be visited upon the sons and daughters, is because, so like, for instance, the demon of rage, it becomes habitual because of the fact that not only is there a demon of vice behind it that is now being thrown off to the other people in the family, that they can also pick up the demons of this demon of rage. But then it's also the habitual behavior that they're witnessing over and over and over again. And so then it's something that they also then either make a different choice and have to master another way, which some people do. And it's really cool when that happens. And then they are able to throw that off. But then you also see where through family lines, people talk about ancestral demons. That's partly what that is. It's the habitual vices that we visit upon generations within a family, of just the things that are common to that family. So sometimes it's drug use, sometimes it's rage. It can be generations and generations of something, even poverty. It can be, we talked about the destructive sexual energy demon that can also be visited upon. And there's many others.
A big part of our own purification is to be aware of what it is that we may have inherited,
Mhm.
and to ask and do whatever it is that we need to do to kind of heal that
Purify.
little bit
That's
ago,
part of the
purify,
purification.
surrender.
And don't judge it. Don't judge your parents or your relatives for having it. It's always so important to look at this as an identification and purification process. And don't judge lest ye be judged, because
Mhm.
we all do this. We do this with things we don't even realize, because the reality is that all of us are walking around with things that we do that we aren't aware of. Other people might see it. Sometimes even other people don't see it, but it's there within all of us. And so we don't want to be judgmental about it, but we identify what we can identify, and then we work to rectify. So if there's something that's like just blatantly obvious, like the demon of rage, then you're going to want to really work to extricate that from your life, because you don't want to carry that guy around.
Yeah, get rid of that. You said something that you realize that darkness has no happiness because it doesn't know God.
Yeah, darkness has no joy because it doesn't know God. I remember that moment when I had this realization, and I just felt this great sorrow for the souls who are really caught up in darkness to that point where they cannot experience true joy because they don't know God. And, there is a certain joy that is beyond our earthly enjoyments that can only be known from God. And so we all know that there are people who are atheists, and there are all kinds of different levels of that, not just atheism, but people who don't know God for other reasons.
Mhm.
And when you can't reach into that treasure trove, then that's just not there for you to experience. And it's good to know this, because it helps us to realize there is something to reach for. It isn't just it's not just a concept or an idea. It's all, we go back to vibration and frequency. This joy that comes from God is an energy and a frequency that is unique in itself, and it's something to reach for.
And I think if we think about the monk again on the boat, because it's so easy to judge. So
Yes,
we talk about demons or people who have demonic influences in their life. It can be pretty easy to judge them
yes.
and just throw them in the trash bin. Oh,
Yeah.
that guy's is like full of demons, Or and the monk could have done that too, right? Just like, hey, get off the boat, stupid, But instead, like, and for you, when you had that realization that people who have darkness in dominant darkness or darkness in them, they don't have any joy, and it's like, so it probably inspired you a little bit to try to work harder to help them.
Yes, it does. It definitely does. And one of the things that I would put out there, it might sting just a little tad, but just a thought to consider, is that when that thought comes up, that temptation to judge, remind yourself that as long as there's any part of you that feels this judgmental nature arising,
Mhm.
that's a sign unto you that you have your own hidden darkness that you don't see. Because when you actually undergo purification, that judgmentalness, that subsides, that is extricated. You become like that monk where you don't feel that at all. It just doesn't happen anymore. So when you feel that, let it be a sign unto you that, but for the grace of God go I, let's not be stupid here. Because we always see what's going on around us, but not what's going on right within us, right?
You said something that if we don't have mercy for others, then mercy won't be shown on us.
Right. We want to always remember that, yeah, the matter in which we mete out mercy, mercy is meted out towards us as well.
And then we talked about, you talked about in the book, the demons of gossip. And they showed up as these snakes, of
Yes.
slander and vanity. And yeah, here's the quote: "If we are merciless with our mouths, mercy will not be given to us." But yeah, can you speak a little bit about the demons of gossip? Because it's kind of the same thing. I feel judgment and gossip.
Well, gossip, ironically, and I feel like ashamed even when we bring it up, because I was so guilty of that.
Let's
most
not
of my
gossip
life.
about let's not gossip about gossip.
Let's not gossip about myself.
So
But it makes me remember, because, and it's something that I have to constantly be on watch for, and I think many of us do. And in Judaism, it's considered such a serious sin, and there's these specific laws of lashon hara and rekalus, which is the laws regarding slander and gossip. And the reason why is because gossip and slander are akin to murder in Judaism, because if you destroy the reputation of another person, you literally destroy them. You
yeah, it was
destroy their ability to make a living, you destroy their life, their marriage, their family, their name. And it's a big deal. And that's why it's such a big deal. We don't really think about how serious our mouths are.
and now they just do it all the time. It's like they slander more, and they can lie and do all, because it's not so easy. You have to go through a lot of rigmarole to sue somebody. So it's just like, okay, let them slander me all day long.
Well, and think about how much that goes on, how much we are all guilty of this, and how easy it is to commit this crime against one another.
I got to admit, I'm going to go back to the Survivor again.
Okay.
So we're watching Survivor, and I'm like, oh, that guy's so dumb. Why would he do that? Or like, somebody on the show calls somebody a doofus, and I'm like, he is kind of a doofus. So is that different because I'm watching these characters on a show, and I'm like, oh, that person is not very bright, or if I was him, I'd be smarter, or.
I mean, I do think it's different if you're just sitting there talking to your wife privately than if you're like on social media trashing somebody.
All right.
You know what I mean? It is very different. And and I do think one of the reasons that people enjoy watching these shows, and one of the things I enjoy about certain types of reality television is because I find it fascinating to see how people, react in various kinds of situations. It's people watching. It's just modern day people watching. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can and we should be aware of the fact that they are people,
Mm-hmm.
and be as kind as we can. It is one thing to just be observant and like, maybe that wasn't the best decision, but not just tearing them apart as a human being.
Get enjoyment out of it.
Yeah, but I think that where we definitely can see it becoming really harmful is when people just rip people publicly like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can't even imagine that. It's like, that's weird to me.
Yeah, and people do that, but you also see this like in people's work environments. A lot of gossip happens in people's work environments. A lot of gossip happens amongst families and friends. And these kinds of things can be real harmful. I don't know. I think people should adopt more the old adage, which used to be more common, which is, I don't know. That's none of my business. That's between them and that other person.
Yeah.
We need to have a little more respect for how we would like our own privacy respected.
Yeah. I went through this course. One of the things that came up was gossip. And it was one of the worst things they said you could do. And like, so if somebody came up to you to talk about somebody, then you'd refer them to go talk to that person.
Yeah.
Why are you talking to me? You should go talk to that person and ask them, why are they doing that? And then,
Yes.
because I'm not going to be able to tell you what's going on with that person. And it's like, so that would just like kill it right away. So, and then it was also talked about gossip just being very contagious.
It
So
is.
once
Yeah.
someone starts, blah, 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 it's like you're there, and it's like, yeah, get them. Or it's just, it is, it is though, kind of.
It's a way to uplift ourselves rather than by tearing other people down.
Stepping on their heads so you can
Yeah.
call her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, rather than giving people the benefit of the doubt that we don't understand what they're going through or what's in their hearts and things like that. We don't understand what's going on in their lives, and that we don't really, it's actually none of our business what, decisions they might be making or what their personal crisis might be. And in fact, that we owe them compassion rather than judgment and nastiness.
so not getting caught up in that, not getting connected to it. You have this statement.
That's why they're represented as these serpents and snakes, is because that's what they are.
Yeah.
When you see them in the mystical, they always have a very appropriate image of what they manifest as.
And I can see like somebody coming and they have a whole bunch of snakes around them. And then if we get involved with whatever they're talking about, then the snakes are all upon us. So your quote was, the surest way to defeat evil is to deny it. So same with gossip. It's like they come up, we're like, hey man, let's talk a bunch of crap. And you're like, no, go talk.
Some good.
I'm gonna do some other stuff.